Hey guys, welcome back to the channel. Tonight we're going to talk about the importance of promoting a line of travel. It's something that I'm sure each and every one of you has heard about, and if you are new to the channel or new to the whitetail world, a line of travel is something that deer consistently use from point A to point B, from your food sources to your bedding areas, and certain hot spots, if you will, that they are scent checking and the process of finding does and all of the entire, pretty much the entire year of the whitetail is built around some sort of line of travel. Now we're going to touch on tonight is we're going to touch on why build a transition and why that is so important. So going back to the first topic we just touched on, most of the properties that I set foot on, the line of travel that is unpromoted, that's a natural line of travel, is sending deer on and off and through properties, making them nothing more than bypass properties. We've all seen them, we've all owned them, we've all hunted them, and if it's a leased property or something like that and you can't manipulate habitat, it's tricky. You have to learn contour and everything else that we talk and we teach here on the channel. But if you're able to promote the line of travel as far as building a transition, here tonight we're going to chat just about that, of why it's so important to follow the steps of building a transition, and why I kind of use that term and the difference between a transition and a corridor, and why we build it, and just that, why we build a transition. So let's dive right into this, guys. The importance that I set forth in a transition is first and foremost. When we start these projects with my clients, it's something that we are building initially as we go. We're doing that together. We're building that off from Hunt Stand. All my designs are built off from Hunt Stand and shared through Hunt Stand. And the reason for that is, guys, and if you're a client tuning in or a past client, I've resourced this with you before. Is the importance of Hunt Stand is through like Onyx and some other platforms that are great as well. But the problem is they don't have a way to share it as a whole. And when we are done with this, we might have 100 waypoints, let's say. This is just some illustration that I've done here to kind of to highlight some of this. But we might have 100 waypoints, and those waypoints had to be shared individually. And if you take this to the next step after the design and the implementation of the design, and you start building off from that, if it's just a photo, which I used to share that, I used to build them off from like Onyx and share them with my clients that way. And if you share them with a photo, or you put them on let's say an aerial map, whatever company that you choose, Northwoods, Huntera, all them are great companies as far as the map itself. But if you give that to someone, they can interpret that differently. You give it to 3 different people, you're going to have 3 different interpretations. And that's why the Hunt Stand app is so important as far as building this, I say, GPS pinpoint accurate, because I feel that it is because we are setting it as we are going. Hence the illustration here, we start at the camp, and so some of you that have already had me build and stuff on the properties, this is going to sound repetitive, but we leave the camp, maybe that southeast corner, and we go up. We're going to set that first stand, and we're actually going to set the first stand, ribbon it off, pin it on the GPS or on Hunt Stand. We're going to go out to the licking branch, and we're going to pin that as well and ribbon that off. So when you start to implement this, you know exactly where you're at. So what I do with this, guys, is I turn the tracker on per the contour, and we're looking for where the food sources are already at, what the contour permits to build the food source, and we start laying this in. As we're laying this, we're heading north. Let's say up off your east fence row, we're heading north. We find a food plot area. As you can see, guys, this is why this is so important, because all the amenities fall on that transition. So that's the first and foremost importance. And the second part of it is a little more internal. We're going to get to that in a second. All your amenities fall on that. Without that line of travel established, you don't really know the size of the food plot, whether it's match bedding or a hub style bedding area that you're implementing. You don't really know how big to build that. How big do you build it? It all pertains to me is the match bedding, especially. It matches your plot. The bigger the plot, the bigger the bedding area, the doe bedding area. So as we start going through this and we start laying it out, we will know as we go where we need water holes, we need licking branches, obviously, on the transition, food plots, our minerals, our mineral stations, our water holes. All of this is an attraction. All of this is an amenity. Just because it's not corn and molasses in a bag doesn't mean that it's not an attraction. So really take that to the bank, guys. And I haven't even implemented the feeders on here, and the feeders can be just that. I always put the feeders on or in the food sources. So in other words, the feeders are going to be in your food plots, on the transition, have all relating to that, and to the plot itself. And why do we do that? To me, guys, the feeders are just there to back up your plots, to aid in the tonnage, that your tonnage requirements. Where most of this goes south is folks start taking these amenities that I've just labeled out here. They start taking these amenities and they start moving them to the stand locations, such as feeders, and at that point you might just as well be hunting the food plot, because it's the same theory, whether you're hunting directly over a corn pile or whether you're hunting directly over a feeder. It's the same theory. You have to be able to get on and off that. So there are certain spots. I've got one spot here that I've had set up for late season here in Kentucky that is directly over corn. And the reason I have that is because I'm not hunting it. I'm on the road with clients and it's not pressured. And so you wait till something shows up and starts daylighting, and you have last couple of days of the season where if you get busted, you're not going to ruin a 90-day season. Go in, take the chance, and maybe harvest them. I'm all about that, but it's got to be treated properly. So keep that in mind, guys, about what you share or what you shared combined on these transition, and how building this and treating this as a line of travel can really promote the size of your property. Most properties are penetrated into too far, and then all the amenities follow the intrusion. So in other words, if you look back on the video that we just did about why one sanctuary doesn't work, is because most folks push all the deer, or try to centrally locate, I guess you could say, not centrally locate in the center of the property, but house them in one area, and think that we are doing great things by just not going in there and not promoting it, not building it, not enhancing it, just leaving it alone. And that sets up the next part of what we're going to talk about here is a core. So as we build this transition, one of the things, guys, it's a huge deal right now in the industry. What sets me apart, I feel what sets me apart from a lot of folks in the industry, is I don't do the let's take a buggy ride, or let's walk the property for 2 or 3 hours, and then we come back to the cabin or the truck and we design it from there. To me, to each his own, right? But to me, you might just as well design that property from 1,000 miles away at that point, because this transition is so important, per contour, laid out, GPS pinpoint accurate, because there's so much more that follows that lead. Build the transition, builds your core. Build the transition, build the core. Put those two together in your memory bank, guys, because this whole process, all of these amenities, water holes in different locations, not having your mineral next to your water hole, having your food plots not next to your your licking branches and your water holes, having this spread out creates this 360-degree line of travel promoted through a transition, and it builds the core. Without laying this out, you can never know exactly how much core you have. If you don't know how much core you have, if it's a guess, and guessing will get you in trouble with creating whitetail habitat. One last thing we're gonna talk about right here. We're gonna cut this one off, is the caution signal that we have right here. If you have one of these properties and this happens to be, when you build the transition, one of those spots that is open and may be available to plant, use caution. Use caution on if you plant this, because if you can't get out of the camp and get around this without blowing this food source off, which I see a lot of. If you can't get out of the camp and get around it and start your hunt, this could potentially ruin all of these right here. So the reason I put this on here, guys, is to you know, err on the side of caution. And one last thing we're going to touch on here, guys, we keep getting to that, but there's so much involved in these transitions. You know, here's a perfect scenario of why we do these, we lay this transition out. The transition is going to come in one side of your plot, it's going to go out the other. What that does is that creates a visual line, you know, for grains and greens. Split grains on one side, greens on the other, as far as your annuals and your brassicas, and that gives you a guidance. Because if you just follow this transition as it's drawn out on the board, you physically want to move through the center of that plot as well. And what that is just that difference in height in 6 to 8 inches, or whatever that case is, maybe a foot between your grains and your greens, will help steer those deer off and on those food sources, which keeps that 360-degree movement going. And that's why we put so much emphasis in building a transition, guys. A lot more that we could talk about on these. We're gonna keep this design, this build here, and we're gonna keep changing the headings as we go. A lot more to talk about on why building a property of, especially this size, when we're talking 40s or 80s, building a property this size, getting the potential out of that property by building the transition, so you know how much core you're building.